Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending the RemitONE webinar, Remittances in Africa, Market Trends, Regulation, Challenges, and Opportunities. I am Sidharth, Associate Sales Director at RemitONE, and will be hosting today's event. We have an hour and a half for today's webinar. For the first hour, I will moderate a panel discussion with our expert panelists. And then there will be a 30 minutes at the end for questions from the audience. Please leave your questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen at any point during the webinar, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the session. Before we dive into panel discussion, just a few words about RemitONE, who we are, and how we support businesses in the remittance industry. At RemitONE, we assist a range of businesses, including startups, established money transfer operators, and banks, by providing them with everything they need to start, run, and expand their global money transfer operation. We can get businesses up and running quickly by guiding them through the process of obtaining a money service license and remittance bank account. We provide businesses with the leading technology to enabling them to run their entire remittance business, enhance customer service, and simplify operations. Finally, we also support business growth by connecting our clients to our vast global network that we've delicately nurtured over the years. So what do you mean by connections and connectivity? Obviously, we have, through our hub network, we've made many integrations and connections throughout the last 20 years. And again, we can connect our partners and our clients to those, so you can provide your clients with other payout networks, other types of payouts, and other types of services. I'm going to start off by introducing some of the panelists. And I'm very pleased to introduce, first of all, we have Mohammed Jagana with us, CEO of Kuringo. We have Leon Issacs, also CEO of DMA Global. We have Linus Adaba, Head of Group Remittance Distribution of Ecobank. We have Sidharth Gautam, Head of Sales for AZA Finance. And finally, Malik Sek, Managing Director of Africa for RIA Financial. So without further ado, let's get into today's panel session. So my first question, and how we're going to conduct this, the question and answer, I'm going to direct the question at one of our panelists. But of course, I would like all of our panelists, they can answer the same question, just jump in at any time if you'd like, or if you've got anything to add, please go ahead. So my first question is going to be initially directed at Leon Issacs, but please, if anyone would like to add, please jump in. And my first question to you, Leon, is, was 2020 as bad as what the World Bank projected to be? A 20% drop in global remittances? And what do you think are the reasons why remittance flows to Africa were still strong and growing in 2020 for MTOs?
Great, thanks Usama for that, and good morning to everyone. I guess the question, sort of the second part of the question answers the first part of the question. But I think just to sort of say that obviously in pretty much soon, within a month of most of the lockdowns happening around the World Bank did come out with this forecast of a 20% drop. And I think, to be fair to them, they probably, who at that point would have been brave enough to stick their necks out and say, put a figure on the direction of travel. And then, of course, I think, as many of you know, later in the year, in October, they revised that forecast to a 7% drop globally in 2020, but then to be followed by a further drop of about the same amount in 2021. So I think the other point we should say is that, of course, data, as we all know, around remittances is pretty imprecise. Many countries do not capture remittance data accurately, particularly like European countries, a lot of the same countries. So it's really, I think, something that gives us a feel for what's going on rather than something that's empirically accurate. having said all of that, if you look at what's happening, there certainly seems to be a lot more positive stories around the volumes of remittances than there was 7 or 8 months ago. And I think if we look at Africa in particular, the performance has been quite phenomenal. I just picked out some numbers earlier. Countries like Kenya up 11%, Zimbabwe over 50%, Gambia up 75%, Morocco up 12%, Egypt up 12%, and it goes on. The only ones that I could really find that have gone down particularly on official numbers would be Uganda at around about 14%, and a big question mark about Nigeria. And I guess we'll talk about Nigeria in more detail later. So I think generally we've seen the reporting has actually been for increases. I suppose part of the question or big question is why, and I hope we'll get into that. But for me, I think there's a number of factors. One is clearly that the migrants, people sending money, still have and maybe even had a bigger imperative to do so. They've demonstrated consistently over the last 20 or 30 years their ability to continually send money, even in times of crisis, and they managed this time. Some received government support in the countries they were in, but a lot delved into savings and so on. But I think another key factor is actually the impact of the crisis on the informal market. As we know, it's particularly difficult for travel at the moment, and a large number of the informal operators were relying on physically moving cash through their various routes, and a lot of those were just closed down. If you look at somewhere, the South Africa-Zimbabwe border, for instance, the physical barriers put up much more stringent and so on, and so people were actually forced not to use the informal market, but to use formal. And of course, these numbers have never been captured by governments before. So in a sense, we might be seeing increased numbers, but maybe the actual flow of money coming into countries isn't changing that much. It's just there's a lot more going through formal areas. So maybe I should sort of stop there and say, it seems to have been actually counter predictions. We don't know whether the amount of money people receive is any different than before, but the methods and channels have certainly changed. And then, of course, we've got the impact of digital, seems to have been particularly strong in Africa in terms of making it easier for people to transfer money from the send markets. And I think here, Africa's been operating digital services, particularly mobile, much longer than other regions. So perhaps it was somewhat easier for people to switch to those methods as well. So let me stop there and go back to you.
Leon, so just to recap a little bit, what you're saying is that this World Bank prediction about remittances going down, it's a little bit hard to predict because there are so many informal ways people do remit money, like your typical hawala, as you said, literally crossing border with physical money. And it's hard to track those things. It's hard to track and understand exactly how much of that is happening. But a lot of them have now had to, of course, switch to the more usual, the more regulated method of making those payments, and therefore we've seen an increase, which is yeah, is that pretty much what you're saying? So it's quite interesting. So it's harder to capture the exact amounts of remittance decrease or increase because of the way people do their remittances, but things are more and more pushing towards the digital way, and that's why we've seen a little bit of a spike. Mohammed, same question to you really. Do you see things have dropped in 2020 for the remittance through Africa?
Oh, sorry, my phone was on mute. In fact, what we have seen in Gambia and West Africa in particular, the remittance during the lockdown periods has blossomed much bigger than even the economists thought of. So I think based on some of the comments Leon mentioned, some of this thing was driven by the fact that the informal sector moved to the formal sector quite rapidly and at a very steep curve. So the data that was not available has been seen available. But the question now is, has there been a global expansion of the remittance into Africa? That is something that we still haven't gone full details of yet. But the numbers has grown drastically during the peak periods of the COVID-19.
Osama, you are on mute.
Fantastic. Yeah, I absolutely I do apologize for that. No, fantastic. And Linus, I know you're quite again, you're Africa based from Ecobank. What kind of things can you tell us about the type of remittances in terms of the volumes and flow have you seen coming through Ecobank?
Okay, thank you. I agree with Leons that the remittance industry in itself is very resilient, and it actually thrives more in moments of crisis when peak money needs to be delivered to people. And so it is not surprising that it defies the projection that the World Bank was put up there. But having said that, Africans really do not forget home. The volume of remittance coming into Africa are the Africans in diaspora that are sending that money home. And when you rank the reasons why money is sent home, family support tops the rank. So whether it is to family members, siblings, or friends, so that affinity is very there and is strong. So COVID therefore provided a situation where more than ever, people were willing to send money back home as most economies were being locked down and African economics being worse off for it. Now, having said that, is also to look at the last mile distribution, which we have infrastructure in Africa that made that to happen. As much of the traditional remittance companies were switching customers to digital device due to the lockdown in Europe, in America, in Asia. In Africa, there's that last mile delivery that allows you to credit bank account instantly or mobile wallets instantly. That also brought value to the thriving industry during COVID. So these are the reasons why we think that remittances still grew in Africa, despite the projections that the World Bank had at the beginning of the crisis. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all for your input. Very interesting numbers and facts coming out of there. Linus, I'm going to stick with you to start off with the next one, our next one as well. How did intra-Africa remittances grow in 2020? And what do you think needs to be done to boost this specific market? So we're talking about intra-Africa payments in specific.
So the intra-Africa market also grew in 2020 more because of some of the factors I've mentioned before. Where a partner has had relationship with any other partner in Africa that allows transactions to happen in bank accounts and into mobile wallets, that help the business. But more importantly also is the fact that most countries therefore saw remittances as a COVID-19 palliative, so to say. Governments were blocking money for handouts to people who were not able to go to their businesses or who were losing their jobs. So the delivery of remittance to members of the public that needs that money becomes something that governments were willing to do. So in certain countries, Government even allowed some hours for people to come out and queue and collect their remittances, especially where you don't have the kind of last mile delivery to deliver that, okay? And some other countries like Kenya increased the value you can do on M-Pesa, for example, or you can receive on M-Pesa to each transaction. Because the more those transactions were coming into a store value position, it's seen as also stemming the distribution of the virus, because there's less contact. So these are the factors why intra-Africa also grew during the COVID period. And mind you that intra-Africa also have regions that has economic rules that allows free movement of persons. If you go into West Africa, you have the ECOWAS, and within West Africa, again, you have the IMOA countries that uses one single currency. So transactions from Senegal or remittance from Senegal to Cote d'Ivoire is within the same country. When you go to Central Africa also, the same thing. And when you put all this together, that is the growth we're seeing. Thank you.
Excellent, fantastic. Leon, I want to pose the same question to you, please, Leon, and specifically the latter. And what do you think needs to be done to boost that specific market, the intra-Africa market? What needs to be done? How can we make it more accessible, or make it sort of more easier for the public to use those kinds of services, really boost those services?
Yeah, great. Thanks. That's a really good question. I mean, I think to put it into context, the World Bank a number of years ago estimated that for every $3 circulating within Africa, $2 actually originated in the continent and only $1 outside of it. And I think most people actually look at Africa from the parts of the world we're in, A, often as one country rather than 55, but also B, as somewhere that is dependent on remittances from the rest of the world. That's not really the case. And the other thing, so anyway, to answer your question on what should be done, there's a number of things, I think. One is the regulatory environments in many African countries are not conducive to intra-Africa payments. There are a number where there's a restriction on the ability for people to send money outside of one African country, regardless of where it's going. So that would be one thing. There needs to be a look at the regulatory environment around being able to send. I think there needs to be a look at the regulatory around what types of entities can actually send, and whether agents are allowed to participate in the process. Because what it's believed is that there's much more money coming back to the informal side, moving informally across borders within Africa than is actually moving formally. And I think this is where mobile money in particular is an absolutely ideal solution, but in many countries, it's not allowed to be adopted at the moment. So for me, that's part of it. I think there's also a whole piece around, obviously, financial literacy is consistently there. The people who will benefit from these services need to know that they exist and that they can access them. And I think the other part is we just need some decent data as well on what's moving officially and informally within Africa. And I think that would bring a lot of attention from policymakers to change their regulations to make it much more sympathetic. So those are sort of some of the things that we could really do with overcoming to be able to encourage this. But I would say, if you're looking for good examples, there are good examples in Africa as well. And I think, as Linus quite rightly said, in West Africa, there's now quite a lot of money moving cross-border through formal sections, through mobile money. For instance, partnerships between Ivory Coast and Burkina Faso have clearly shown that the appetite is there to use alternative methods if they can be made available to people.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much for that insightful thought there. I'm going to direct my next question to Sidharth Gautam. And Sid, my question to you is, how will technology help in the new trend of remittance business in Africa? And is Africa ready for cryptocurrencies? Do you see it having a significant effect in the next 5-10 years? So 2 parts really to that question, technology, and hopefully we can go on to hear Mohammed's thoughts as well about this particular topic. So initially, technology itself, how do you see it affecting businesses in Africa? Do you see any new types of technology or trends coming about? And then cryptocurrency in itself, is that a thing in Africa? Is that growing? And how do you see that operating out there?
Yeah, thanks, Osama. Very good question and relevant question. So good morning to all of you from my end. Yeah, so there are 2 bits to this question. One is the technology, how technology is, let's say, accelerating the remittance business within Africa. And then on the other spectrum, what does cryptocurrencies have a role to play in that? So yeah, like we all know, the cost of sending remittances to Africa is highest in the world, almost 9%. As compared to Southeast Asia, if you compare, it's around close to circa 1 to 2%. So it's 5 times more costly to sending money to Africa than to, for example, Southeast Asia. And why is a big question. Why it is 8%, 9%? We all know the reason for that is it's the cash payout. So for cash, you need logistic. It requires more logistical support. You need to have those physical point of sales where the customer can go and collect the cash. Okay, and there's a cost associated with it, both in terms of manpower, OPEX and CAPEX, and that's the reason Africa has got one of the highest remittances cost for sending money. Now, how does COVID, the pandemic in 2020, help in leveraging the technology? Is again, like East Africa mobile money, mobile wallets was popular, like M-Pesa was Safaricom product. We all know. What has happened with this pandemic is the adoption of the mobile money across Africa as a whole, across the continent, has gone, in many leaps and bounds up. We, in ASA, we are an MTU aggregator and we are a market maker. We ourselves have seen our business going through the roof. While for some businesses it's not a good story, but for us or for other operators or players who are digitally ready, for them the business have literally over the roof. And the reason for that is the migration. There is a risk associated with the cash. People don't spread of the virus happens. So both from a sender market and at the beneficiary market, the business have moved to the bank accounts and to the mobile wallets. Another shift which I would bring and I would like to talk about is the is the easier KYC practices by allowing receivers of the remittances to connect their digital wallet to their SIM cards and complete the KYC virtually. So this again made the the remittances more easier and more accessible to the continent. So these are the things, and we in ASA we foresee that this trend will go on and will go stronger and stronger in every passing year. The digitization of remittances have already started. The reliance on cash is reducing. So if you see in the overall pie, if the cash used to be around 70% globally, it is getting reduced, and all big operators, whether without naming anybody, the top 3, their digital remittances are growing almost. It's a strong double-digit growth. In some cases, Q2 and Q3 at the peak of the pandemic, it was almost triple-digit growth. So that is from a digitization of an economy and the leveraging technology. From a cryptocurrency, again, it's very interesting the way it is happening, and we being a crypto means we have a separate product for a cryptocurrency, and we see it again being adopted. We have seen like BTC have crossed $56,000 just a few days back, and the way it exploded from somewhere around 2 quarters back, from $6,000-7,000 to now around $56,000, and there are talks that it might replace gold in time to come in terms of an hedge. So yeah, means cryptocurrency transactions in Africa are for showing rapidly. People have, and this is again linking it back. This is coupled by already the way people have embraced the mobile technology and the mobile wallet in that part. So Africa, yes, it's one of the most promising regions in terms of cryptocurrency adoption due to its unique combinations and the demographic trends. However, it's little too early to say what will be the percentage growth, but yeah, generally I can say that in next 5 to 10 years, it will be widely accepted as a means of payment, with the regulation loosening up, with more and more accepting this form of payment. So yeah, for cryptocurrencies, Africa is a go-to-market continent.
Excellent, fantastic. And Mohammed, I want to sort of pose the same question to you, and before we go on, so just to sort of recap a little bit, what Sidharth is saying, what I think we can all agree, is that there has been a slow shift in the past, more towards the digital side of remittances, digitalization, making things through APIs and things like that, and crypto. But where we've seen it slowly in the past take over, or we've seen the percentage grow slowly in the past, the pandemic has really accelerated that. Would you say accelerated that shift from your usual brick and mortar remittances to the mobile phone apps and things like that? And of course, in terms of technology itself, and again, Mohammed, do you think that it will play a big part, especially with the unbanked? I know there's a large part of Africa is unbanked, and of course, technology plays a large part in that, offering people e-wallets and things like that. Do you see that as well growing, Mohammed, in the near future? How do you see technology affecting remittances in Africa? I think Mohammed, is he? I think he might have dropped off there. I believe.
I might have dropped off.
I think Mohammed Jagana has dropped off. Not to worry. Linus, is he back? Oh, there we go. Mohammed, there we go. Mohammed, I'm not sure if you caught that last bit. Unfortunately, you dropped off. I want to pose.
So I think we have some little internet challenges in the Gambia today. Apologies if you could just recap the question.
Yes, absolutely. So my main question, Mohammed, is how do you think technology will affect remittances in Africa in the near future? And anything you believe that might be a new technology or new way of operating that you might think have a big impact on the African market? And of course, then going on to the cryptocurrency side, do you think that will play a big part in remittances in Africa over the next 5 or 10 years?
I think Mohammed again froze. He had
I do think Mohammed is having some technical difficulties. Okay, I'm going to move on for the time being and actually pose that question to Linus. Oh, no.
Yeah, maybe. Sorry, the connection is a little bit haphazard. Sorry about that.
I think we have you back, Mohammed. Mohammed, did you get the question?
No.
Okay.
Can you just repeat the question?
No worries, of course. So our main question is, how do you see technology affecting remittances in Africa going forward? Any new technology, any trends that you foresee is going to have a big impact on the way that remittances are made in Africa?
Sam, apologies. I'm breaking up. I can't hear you.
No worries.
If you can just repeat the question.
Okay. Well, one more time. Hopefully, Mohammed can get this one. I think, Mohammed, if it's easier, yeah, you by all means keep your video off. That might keep your bandwidth a bit higher. So the question again is technology. How do you foresee technology affecting remittances in Africa over the next 5 or 10 years? In terms of, do you see any trends or any particular technology having a big impact, like maybe cryptocurrency or anything like that?
Well, I think there is an opportunity that Africa has not harnessed. We've seen what happened recently. I think it was last month or so, or this month in Nigeria, when the central bank just decided to stop all use of crypto for B2B transactions. But the challenge we have is in the next 5, 10, 20 years, would it be possible for Africa to have a single digital currency that would allow intra-Africa trade, intra-Africa remittances? Because today you have about 35 different currencies across Africa in about 5 or 6 different regions. It might be easier within a particular block to send and receive money. But today from Gambia, if I wanted to send money to somebody in Ghana, I have to take the Dalasi, convert it to dollar, then to cedis. So by the time they receive it in Ghana, the exchange loss and all of the other costs that comes with it make the cost of remittance pretty high. And I think technology and a single African-based digital currency would help remittance and trade across Africa.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much for that input, Mohammed. Mohammed, I'm actually going to stick with you for the next question. Hopefully others can join in because this is quite a large topic that I think is going to sort of.
Hello.
Hello.
This is Linus. Can I share my thoughts around the issue on technology and cryptocurrency?
Absolutely. Please do. We'll be more than happy to hear your views. Please do.
Okay. I think in terms of technology, I want to see technology in terms of the infrastructure that we have in Africa that boosts remittances today. And I want to look at it into 3 big silos. What are the banks doing? When you look at regulation in Nigeria and in Ghana, which allows instant payments to bank accounts, that is an infrastructure that is existing, that is aiding the distribution of remittances in these 2 countries. And I would say that it is the way to go for other countries in Africa where instant payment can be done. Because remittances in itself is instant payment. The structure of first mile to last mile is the promise of instant delivery. The second pillar to that also is to look at a bank like Ecobank, where her own infrastructure can also deliver money instantly to 33 countries where they are present. So connecting with Ecobank means that all the accounts in those countries can be reached or can be leveraged. The third one is to look at the mobile money and the big brands in the mobile money. So they've also created wallets. And as a matter of fact, as I said earlier, that's helped in accelerating remittances even during the COVID era. Okay. Now, I want to see that what the regulators have done in terms of mobile money, providing guidelines on how a telco can do mobile money in itself is an innovation, and it will be there for the long haul, because that is beginning to help remittances in Africa. If you look at East Africa, then you look at the dominance of M-Pesa Safaricom. Then when you look at some other Orange Money, Airtel Money, MTN Money, and those are clusters of where all these developments have happened. Now, central bank brought out policies that allow telcos to be able to create mobile money and mobile wallets that is aiding this. But the same central banks are saying, no to cryptocurrency. And as Mohammed said, yes, one of the major central banks in Africa, Central Bank of Nigeria, has said no to cryptocurrency. And why that? It's just because today, cryptocurrency in itself does not have a regulatory framework to assure members of the public who are using it that it is a value of exchange. And so one cannot really say that there's going to be any significant impact on cryptocurrency, on remittances in Africa, until we have a regulatory framework around that. People may argue around it, why must it be regulated? But really, anything with money exchanges have ever been regulated, okay? And I think that what regulators need to do is to understand how cryptocurrency works and give a framework that guides us the way mobile money has been done. If that is in place, then we can begin to talk about it being used as a medium of remittances in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that input, Linus. And it's quite interesting when we mentioned cryptocurrency and it's being regulated. Now, if we look at again any exchange itself, that they're usually regulated by central banks and other governing bodies. Well, I think with cryptocurrency, it was launched. The fact that the regulation is not regulated by the banks, right? It's outside of that of that circuit. So it'd be quite interesting to see how they will then re-engage or get themselves involved in the regulatory side of it, because I think the whole point of crypto is that you have a chain, or it's regulated internally with the other users who are using that service. So it's quite interesting. It'll be quite interesting to see how governments tackle that issue.
Yeah, Osama, just to add on to what Linus is saying, like probably the way to start with is a stable coin. That's already started in Europe. Like a French regulator is issuing a license to MTOs to settle in stable coins. So yeah, probably the digital assets in terms of cryptos, Ethereum, Bitcoin is a little far to go. But then if it is a stable coin which is tagged against a fiat, that is a one step forward, and then see how it evolves, and then probably will go little more mainstream. The only thing is it's a matter of time, whether it's couple of years down the line or 5-10 years down the line. But I think it is an irreversible process which have started.
Did you agree with that, Leon? How do you see technology affecting the African market over the coming years?
Well, there's a lot been said. I mean, I think the first point is there's a lot of new technology initiatives going on, and I think Africa is sort of a hotbed for that, which does mean that there's the opportunity to leapfrog some of the steps that other countries had to take to get to where they are now. I think the real challenges are still, for me, much around the infrastructure that's available, the fact that cash is still king in the marketplace. But I think as more and more people get accounts, and if we can make sure that the different types of accounts are able to talk to each other, so mobile money wallets are able to talk to bank accounts in a consistent way cross-border, so we have that type of interoperability. I mean, at the moment we're struggling with basic interoperability between operators who offer the same types of service. There are some good exceptions. Nigeria has a very good Naira clearing. I'm sure we'll talk about that later, and some other countries are embarking on that. But I think in order to make the most of technology, government needs to be fully involved. It needs to be pretty broad-minded and not just try and stop things, but create safe spaces to try and pilot things. And then I think we need more and more people to obviously adopt technology. And so I do agree with Linus about bank account being one of them, mobile being another. They seem to be the two at the moment. And then when we come to crypto, I mean, I guess the challenge at the moment with crypto is exactly that. Not enough people understand it well enough to know whether it has a role to play, particularly in the remittances market. And then you've got issues about with the crypto, who, where is it coming from? Who's issuing it effectively? And so I think to Sid's point, I would also agree that I think if we see central bank digital currencies as a means forward, that is more like, and there's efforts on that already happening in Africa, then I think there's more chance of it becoming a part of the solution. I also think that we need to be clear about where these type of solutions are making the most difference. So it could be that with crypto, it's actually much more useful for the operators for settlement between themselves and managing exposures than it may be for the consumers who are transferring money, whereas other services are much more easier for consumers to work with. But I think these are all questions, but undoubtedly all of these solutions will come and play a part in the future. I just don't know when.
Brilliant, excellent. Thank you so much for that, Isaac. Yeah, and it is quite interesting when we talk about the crypto and education on the crypto and how it works. And interesting point you said there is how the end user would see it, or how the MTO themselves would use the crypto in terms of their operations. Because I think a lot of end users at the moment, they're not using the crypto as a means of remittance, more of a means of an asset. So rather than buying that crypto to send on, they're buying it and hoping in the hope that it will increase in value, rather than actually using that crypto for a payment or something like that. So it's just quite interesting how it's all splintered at the moment. Excellent. I'm going to move on to my next.
Osama, just one comment
Please,
before you
Mohammed,
move
yes.
on. I think just picking up on what Leon and Linus said, in terms of where Africa should be in the future, instead of the African Union pushing for a single African passport, they should push for a single African digital currency where central banks would be able to regulate the rates and settlement, which would make it easier. As I mentioned earlier, with 35 currencies, the effect of 1.5 billion Africans is not effective in the remittance corridor. So I think this is something that the regulators need to look at in terms of what the future should be for Africa. There should be an opportunity where when you download a mobile app, you want to send X amount of value to Ghana or Nigeria. You as the end user or the receiver should not worry about exchange losses, which basically restricts the amount of formal transfer or remittance in this part of West Africa.
I think most of us can agree with that statement. Thank you very much for that input, Mohammed. Mohammed, I'm actually going to stick with you on the next question. How have the central bank measures promoting mobile remittances during the COVID outbreak impacted your operations in Africa? So again, Mohammed, just to repeat that question, how have the central bank measures promoting mobile remittances during COVID outbreak impacted your operations in Africa? Have they been doing any sort of any pushes, any governmental initiatives or incentives or anything like that to help you again go more to the mobile remittance rather than the typical one? Has that affected you at all, Mohammed? Okay, I think we might have lost Mohammed again. I'm just going to move over to Linus and hopefully come back to that one. Hopefully we can all answer. But Linus, I think this is quite a broad one, and again, everyone can jump in. And we'll come back to Mohammed's question afterwards. Linus, I want to ask you, how will the new regulation of the CBN, Central Bank of Nigeria, cash payment in hard currency and only by banks impact you and the remittance market in Nigeria? Settlements, non-banks, agents, customers, and etc. So CBN, really talking about the new Central Bank of Nigeria requirement that they've put in place, or regulation that they've put in place. How's that affected you, and how do you see that going forward?
Okay, thank you. I think the regulation came into force on December 4th, being issued on November 30th. And the idea from the central bank is to be able to track the value of inflow into the country, where we have activities of some middlemen that is not allowing that transparency to happen. And so what the central bank seeks to do is to ensure that the beneficiary collects the money in dollars at the counters of the bank. But that is not only the part of the business. You can also credit a domiciliary account of a beneficiary. And this can be in euro, dollar, or pounds, because these three currencies are allowed as for a customer to open an account in any bank in Nigeria. But if you don't have any of these accounts, or money has been sent to you by cash, you can collect it. Because before this time, money was going to bank accounts in Nigeria, and there was also cash. As a matter of fact, because of the payment infrastructure in Nigeria, 70 to 80% of remittances to Nigeria in the last 2 years has been more to bank accounts. Okay, because of the instant delivery. So that infrastructure is there. And so the central bank is just changing the currency from Naira to dollar to ensure that transparency and be able to track the inflow into the countries. Yeah, were there challenges when we started? There were challenges. First challenge was banks can easily get Naira notes. Where do we get the dollar notes from? And the central bank has demonstrated that they can support banks with dollar notes on for the remittance for remittance payouts. So that was solved. The second issue was also that monies that are coming in local currency were being returned as not being, the banks are returning it that they cannot apply it to the account because you ought to have put it into the currency of the account, which is typical in bank. And I know that the central bank has also given a guideline to that to say that is not the intention. If the customer has a Naira account at all, and you can verify that he has a Naira account and the KYCs are proper, please credit the customer, open a domiciliary account instantly for the customer, attach to the local currency account and credit the account to the dollar. The central bank went further to also say that tiered accounts, and what we mean by tiered accounts here now is that accounts that are meant for financial inclusion, which has light KYCs and whatever. If they also receive money, please open a dumb light account for them immediately. And there is a limit to which those recipients can withdraw per day until they can scale up their KYC to full accounts. So yes, there was teething problem in implementing that, especially in the month of December, when remittance in itself is at the peak, okay? But I think majority of those challenges has been handled. And I do know that virtually every week, the central bank is meeting with all money transfer players to know whatever concerns they have, including managing directors of banks, also to know what concerns they have, and they are taking the feedback and are also creating more avenues to ensure that whatever problem is there is being resolved. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Sidharth, would you say the same?
Yeah. While dollar payout has its own challenge. If a customer get dollar, let's say what a customer will do, you don't, you need to convert it to a local currency, and for that again you have to either go back to the bank or you have to go to the bureau of the change in Nigeria to get it. Having said that, we promote local currencies, and we strongly feel that the dollarization of Nigeria could be a challenge for the local currencies. So yeah, it's a new regulation. It's spanning out. There was, though there is no official figures, but I believe there is a loss of remittance during the peak Christmas season when everybody sent money back home. Though there is no official figures, but then as things are spanning out, we believe the market will find its own parity, and things will improve. Yeah, but then dollarization of Nigeria and Africa in general, it's not a good thing. Like we are in to support the local currencies.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for that, Sidharth. And Isaac, how have the new regulations affected your business?
Thanks, Osama. Well, I guess our business is as a consultancy or advisory group. So we are actually undertaking work with the British government at the moment to try and understand the impact, particularly on the UK to Nigeria remittance corridor, and in particular how it's impacted the users or the receivers of remittances, and to an extent the senders, because I think we've heard, we've talked to quite a lot of operators, and it's pretty mixed bag depending on who you talk to as to how it's impacted their business. Some businesses are saying that it's actually led to an increase in transactions and others a decline. And I think, some of that is clearly due to the fact that there was virtually no notice given to some of the operators. So it's quite difficult operationally to react quite quickly. I think, you know, one of the things we need to remember, and Linus sort of talked about this, is that this is part of, you know, quite a broad approach by CBN to try and manage the different exchange rates, and in particular, the parallel market that exists in the country. You know, and you're looking at a parallel market where the exchange rate may be 20% different to the official rates because the Naira is not floating. And so I suspect that what we're going to see is that over time, there will be tweaks to the policy and it will fit into a much broader range of initiatives. But in the short term, I think the good thing is that the CBN, whatever you think about how they introduced it, are very much in dialogue with the operators to try and understand what's happening and to tweak it where necessary. But I think it's part of a problem we often see where countries have quite significant parallel exchange rates. And if you look for the extreme example, you could look at what happened to Zimbabwe a number of years ago, where they eventually had to dollarize the whole economy because of rampant inflation and an undervalued Zim or an overvalued Zim dollar. So I think we need to look at it like that, but it will, if it carries on as it is, it might bring more stability, but really it's not making a lot of impact on the parallel market rate at the moment. So the question is whether that will change in the near future, which would then be, you know, a strong success. But when we've done the consumer research, by the way, we'll be sharing that as a public good to everyone, so you can see what the impacts are on those, which might help companies actually in developing their solutions further. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Leon. I've got my last question here. We've got eight minutes or so.
I want to share more light on the issue of this in Nigeria before you move on, please.
No, please go ahead.
I think it's not the right word to say that there is a dollarization in Nigeria. You talk about dollarization when you can use dollars as a means of exchange for commodities wherever you are. The central bank has always registered bureau de changes in Nigeria. It's part of the financial system in Nigeria. So if you pick your remittance dollar today, you cannot just go across the street and use it in the supermarket to buy goods. That's when we can be talking about dollarization. But the central bank is allowing the individual to negotiate rates with bureau de changes and have their Naira value, which they now use for exchanges. And this is not new. 10, 15 years ago, the central bank also went this on the remittance business. Now, the central bank is very proactive on the remittance business. And the Nigerian government has also created an agency, a commission for Nigerians in diaspora, all in the bit of tracking the volumes of remittance into Nigeria, which can aid development and the like. So before this regime, the central bank is giving close to 14 Naira buffer to remittance inflow into Nigeria as against the official exchange rate to encourage inflow into Nigeria. They were not even trying to match the parallel market or the black market. We know that the black market in itself is a parallel market. The moment you try to go close, it just expands. So that's not what they're doing. It is actually trying to unify the exchange rate, because when you do have dual exchange rates, which are official, one for remittances and one for doing other businesses, then people begin to question that which is really the exchange rate. Now, were there remittance operators who were not remitting money into Nigeria in dollars? Yes, they were doing round tripping. And it's very simple for you to see those remittance operators saying that they're sending money to Nigeria for free. There's no free lunch anywhere. You are taking the money on a foreign exchange, simple. And that is why there's a pressure on the foreign exchange. So the same central bank that has expanded the players to about from about 5 in the past to about 60 players cannot suddenly be killing that market. I think the truth must be told that when regulators trust us with some policies and we decide to play tricks in the market, they have the right to reverse it. And so what I've seen the central bank, in my own opinion, what I've seen the central bank doing is to say, let's back to the basics, ground zero, and let's start building again. And as Leon said, the challenges and the engagement that is going on will prefer more loosening on what we have today. But if we ask ourselves, we were putting pressure. Remittance partners were putting pressure on the Naira, and no central bank will watch its foreign exchange slide in that manner. The answer we cannot say today is, will the black market will have been hitting the roof now if that was not in place in December? Thank you.
No, thank you so much for that, Linus. Thank you for your input. Much appreciated. Just got a couple of minutes and then we're going to go on to the question answers at the bottom. But just before we do, and anyone can jump in and answer this question, how will MTOs cope with the digitalization and compliance issues when more and more customers go online or use mobile app? So we have discussed how everything is moving towards more and more towards the digital market. We are having more and more users. Again, some of them might be unbanked. More and more users wanting to use online platform or remittances or mobile platform. That large influx now of all those onboarding that needs to be done and KYC that needs to be done. How do you see sort of money transfer operators dealing with that large influx of KYC that's going to be needed to be done, or compliance that's going to be needed to be carried out?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Sid.
No, it's okay, Mohammed, go on.
I think, Osama, in the biggest cities and towns, it's not a challenge. But as Linus mentioned, the challenge we will face is the last mile of the financial inclusion journey. A town or a village that is 200 kilometers away from the capital. How do you KYC and onboard clients so that they can use mobile money to pay for the small things in the shops? And how would that shopkeeper take that mobile money and convert it into cash or pay their supplier? I think this is where the regulators need to come in and make it more fluid. For example, in Gambia, we have 2 mobile money wallet operators, but it's a challenge. As Isaac said, interoperability is a problem. So if you go to a particular operator who is not within the same network as you, what do you do? Do you have to onboard? Do they have to KYC you? So it makes it difficult for the underbanked, underserved, especially as I mentioned earlier, on the last mile of the financial inclusion journey. And I think this is where regulators really need to come in and figure out how do we make it easier to onboard and later on of the required KYC documentation. Thanks.
Yeah, further building upon what Mohammed is saying, I completely believe like compliance digitization is the key going forward, wherein both from the sender side in terms of shorten the onboarding lead time and the last mile pickup for a beneficiary. Like, cash is still the king out there, though there is a seen shift towards the digital method, but still the cash is the king. And at times there are the liquidity issues even in the cash pickup. Without naming anybody, we have seen a couple of operators in the in the Western Africa have a persistent liquidity issues. So yeah, and then there is a KYC process. There is a whole lot of user interface. The customer satisfaction also comes into picture, and then obviously the regulator has to be in front of all this. Like they are the engine for growth. So overall, all these things of a puzzle has to come together so that the digitization as a whole of the compliance and the KYC has to happen, so that the business should move from more offline to online business in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very
If
much.
I may.
Please, Linus, please go ahead.
Okay. Again, I like breaking things into silos, and I see one segment of mobile money that is state-led or national-led. And I also see the other leg that is more of a private enterprise. And while we see more of innovation on the private enterprise, the state-led telcos are not that innovative until government says do. But we think that, yes, there is a lot of regulation outside there today that is allowing the KYC on mobile money. And really, there's a big brand in Africa that had to KYC all their customers on mobile money in readiness for remittances. They have had to invest on compliance tools and have compliance managers to ensure that people who are going to use mobile money that is remittance enabled are at the same level of KYC that the regulator expects. And they are doing this in partnership with banks, in partnership with their agents. Because really, when we're talking about last mile, they sell their SIM cards in remote villages. And the technology of mobile in itself means that it's using a radio wave, and so it can actually travel farther than where we are using wires and cables, and we have to do big infrastructure. So the telcos actually have the infrastructure. But I have always argued that mobile money in itself is a derived product to the telcos. And so now finding themselves in the payment space, they just need to comply with what regulation is. And that's why they have to subject themselves to the central bank of each country, that will give them the guideline on how to go about it, including in the issuance of the electronic money, including KYC in that respect. And I think today there's a lot of technology that is coming out that is allowing nimble KYC to be done. But having said that also is to look at what are the risks we are trying to cover, okay? If it is just for remittances, cross-border remittances and the like, you will not be asking for a KYC of a full bank account that can take loan, credits, and the likes in that respect. And that's why I felt that, again, advocacy, engagement with regulators is to define what is that KYC light for the remittance business. The minimum threshold you need to have for customers who are going to be using this product, because mind you, banks have always existed. But where have these customers not touched financial institutions or financial products? Is because of this restrictive compliance requirement that is expected. Now, I also see a headwind in countries where they have national ID. So your SIM card matched with a national ID becomes easy to, as a means of making you into mobile money or do remittances, because as it were, really, when we look at some of these regulations and KYC, we're saying, we want to know the person that is doing the transaction. Absolutely. Don't forget about the fact that any industry has fraud, apart from other risk elements. And this is what protects every other person. So the countries who have national IDs could actually link the registration of mobile money to SIM card and to the national ID, and then they will have a thriving industry. Thank you.
Exactly. Well, what you're saying is quite interesting, because when you mention SIM card and national ID, if, for example, there was a database, a larger database, I'll give you an example. It's sort of like in Europe, you're allowed to have one license, let's just say from France, and then passport that license to other European countries, because what they're saying in essence is you've reached a standard, which is Payment Service Directive 2. So you've reached a certain compliance standard where your technology has reached a certain standard. We know that you're checking on certain blacklists and sanctions lists. Some of those lists, again, can be a central database. And as long as you are reaching all these levels and we can tick those boxes, then we can open the doors for you and you can do remittances even easier. So I think that's quite an interesting and important point there. And when you mentioned being linked to a ID card and their bank card, because there's a database in the background there, there's a database, we have the person's name, we have his address, it's obviously all linked to the card. And now we can check that database, we can check other aspects, we can check his name, we can do some KYC on that database, pulling information from that database. But that database also does have to be centralized and maybe available to more than one country. And I think that will definitely help with the cross-border side. If there's a more of an African sort of initiative to have a more centralized compliance, or to have a standard, which again you can apply across more than one African country, then once you've reached that standard, it will make it a bit more easier and open for people to be able to trade with each other. Which, again, we have examples of that, like in the EU and things like that. But thank you very much. I'm going to go on to some of the questions and answers for the last sort of 20 minutes or so before we do wrap up. Regime in Africa, PSP and Telcom will be able to. Okay, we've got one here, so anyone can answer this one from, is it Roxanne Debiri? Can you provide an overview on the licensing regime in Africa? What license do PSPs and telecoms need to be able to conduct intra-Africa and international payments? Quite a big question there. I think that might boil down to each region as well. Yeah? I mean, does anyone want to quick? Leon, is that?
Yeah, sorry, I'm back at school raising my hand, but I could probably do it digitally, but I haven't worked out how yet. So apologies for that. So I think this is a great question from Roxanne, and I think, Osama, as you were about to say, it really varies pretty much from country to country, although there are some regional sets of regulations, particularly in West Africa. So I think there is a tool that will be launched very soon called RemitScope Africa, again, easily available and online, that will actually outline the different licensing regimes to quite a granular degree, complete with links for each country. And for the telcoms at the moment, the GSMA already has a regulatory tracker that people can access online to actually see what regulations apply to them. But, you know, generally speaking, there'll be a number of pieces of regulation that apply in each country, and they will cover what types of businesses are actually allowed to offer the services. Are they allowed to use agents? What do they have to do about foreign exchange, and so on. And there's definitely different approaches, as Linus has already been saying, in countries between how they view banks and licenses there, and for some, how they might view other providers. It's quite a fast changing market as well. So for instance, a country like Ghana has recently changed its payments regulations. And even yesterday, they published some new guidelines on how non-bank payment service providers can handle inbound payments and so on. So I think it's quite a big question, which we can't really, which probably merits a whole webinar on its own anyway, but there are resources out there, and we'll share the links afterwards, if that's all right, Usama, so that people can actually know where to go to get this information, which might help them.
Absolutely, absolutely. All our details will be, I mean, if that's what's required, or which all our details will be shared with the attendees at the end, and they'll receive the webinar as well via email. I think they need a recording for it too. Would anyone like to add to Roxanne's question before we try to move on to the next one? We good? Okay, fantastic. I've got one from Lakshmi. here. And Lakshmi is saying quite recently, India has banned completely the use of cryptocurrency. So that's completely banned in India. And I think this is going back to our last one. So not rather than how do we see it, how do we see cryptocurrency in Africa of the next 5 years? How do the governments of Africa view cryptocurrency now? So how is it being used now? Is it sort of shied away from? Is it frowned upon? Might it be banned? If someone can give me, I think Linus might be a good position as well to answer this. How is cryptocurrency viewed by the regulators in Africa at the moment?
Okay, thanks. I think when we are talking about regulators in Africa, let's look at the French West Africa that is under one central bank called IMOA. That's about 7-8 countries. And when you look at the Central Africa also, there's about 7 other countries again there that are under the same central bank. So it's about 15 countries in Africa are under 2 central banks, and then the rest have their own central banks. So when we are talking about regulation of cryptocurrency in Africa, it has to do with what does each central bank puts forward as a policy for cryptocurrency. And as Mohammed has said, perhaps maybe under the auspices of AU, we could pull resources together to discuss that and perhaps fast track it for a common agreement for an African crypto. But from where I sit, I think today, perhaps Nigeria is also the only country that has come out to say they are going to issue some guideline soon. The ban on cryptocurrency is not forever. It is to make the regulator to be able to come up with guidelines that will guide the market. But you see, if Nigeria even does that today, it becomes a single country compared to the rest of Africa. So we need to have that consensus. Number one, that cryptocurrency in itself is required. As Leon has said, yes, there is a whole lot of knowledge gap within the subject matter. And so it perhaps needs a seminar or a workshop that's where regulators can also come and voice their concern for the necessary consensus building that we need to have. But the question here is, who is going to organize that? So if each country in Africa is sovereign, and apart from these countries that I've said have grouped together under one central bank, then the question therefore is, who is organizing towards that end goal? I think that is the major problem than Africa evolving its own cryptocurrency. What is the organization towards that? Today, I can't see that. And so probably see a lot of countries issuing their own various policies on cryptocurrency, and some we actually say it's a no-no. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Linus. We have another question now from Anonymous. Yeah, they're saying, we heard from the experts that digital channel is picking up and will adversely affect brick and mortar retail channels. And again, I don't think it's just the fact that we were moving in that direction, and the governments are pushing towards more digitalization because of source of funds and so on and so forth. But companies themselves are pushing towards the digitalization because it's becoming cheaper to make a transfer, again, through a digital method. But just going back to the question, in light of this, how retail players are trying to stay relevant, and are we seeing them closing down stores, or are they introducing new products to stay afloat? So we're talking about your typical brick and mortar one. Now things are going more digital. How are they trying to sort of negate that that loss in flow or revenue?
Okay, let me allow to answer it. So the way it is moving is, as per the World Bank, the digital, the cash payout is still 70 to 80%. And why I'm saying this, from a sender side or a beneficiary side, even if one of the lag is a cash pay-in or a cash payout, it is counted as a cash payout. Okay, so it's not going anywhere in the near future. The only thing is the shift has happened, but still almost 3/4 of the payout world over is on the cash. So that these brick and mortar establishment is not going out anywhere soon. Yes, they have to reinvent themselves. They have to enter into a new partnership. They have to innovate, which they are doing. They have to add new products as well. But then closing down the store, I don't think so. That's happening at least in next few years. It's a clear run. The shift has started because a lot of that has to a role has to play by the regulator also. Like somebody who don't have an account, that man or women have got no other option but to accept the cash. So that is where the governments and the regulators have to be very, very proactive in terms of having a mobile wallet or attaching a bank account, because make no mistakes, even a mobile wallet without a bank account cannot work. So whether you're talking about a mobile wallet or about a bank account payout, it is a role of a government and the regulator to make it happen, which we have seen, in Africa still it's happening, but still challenging. And that's the reason in near to medium term, closing down of the brick and mortar retail is not happening. Thank you.
If I can just also add maybe to that, and to steal a line from Linus if he doesn't mind, I'm also thinking about this in silos, because it's a good question. Because if you think about the let's say the retail players, really you've got to distinguish between the money transfer operators, who are the person in the middle collecting the money internationally and crediting it to a local business, and the local businesses who are the retail network. Most money transfer operators don't have their own retail network in the paying out countries. They're using people like Ecobank, they're using retail chains and so on. And those businesses that they're using as retail networks have always had another string to their bow. There's very few businesses, particularly in Africa, that would have just set themselves up as a money transfer payout service. So in a sense, actually, the bigger issue is for the traditional money transfer companies that have relied on cash, as Sid was just saying. Are they going to be able to survive? And I think the initial evidence we're seeing is that nearly everybody has switched to digital. Many had services anyway, but you look at the biggest companies, their quarterly earnings announcements they made a couple of weeks ago, all of them are focused on, we're switching everybody to digital. Digital is now much more important. But actually, they're also saying we've got very big retail distribution networks that we're using. They don't own them, they just have agreements with them to pay out. So like Sid said, I don't see many changes there. And the impact is probably more on changing how transactions are made, rather than the disappearance of retail networks that were really focused on other areas anyway. And often being a money transfer agent is a nice little top-up earner, but it might not be the biggest earner for that business anyway. Hope that helps.
Absolutely.
Just a quick one. For example, in our case, we were in the retail sector for the past 15 years. So just last year, that's when we went backward integration and started our own digital platform. And we have noticed that in the new locations that we're opening, the senders are using digital access to send the money, but the recipient doesn't have the digital access to close it. So I think what Sid said, in the near future, it has to be a cocktail for it to be successful, especially on the last mile of the journey.
Absolutely, I agree on that.
Okay. So if I may come in,
please.
I think I agree with Leon's submission, and I just want to add that as digitization is taking the space and more big companies are digitizing their products and services, the ultimate beneficiary, even if he can also receive that in a digital form, how can he earn value from that money he has received? And so, yes, I've received money, but I need to use it to do some payments. Where I'm going to do those payments, will they also accept my digital payments? So where there's no acceptance, or many, just like Mohammed has said, on a cocktail of instruments that can make me utilize that, then you look at cash. And of course, it therefore means that there is a transformation from the retail shops banks have today to the private shops. How can you take that function and provide it to the retail shops today for customers to go and encash money there to do their transactions? Just like ATMs. Customers still go to ATMs today to withdraw cash because the ATM is a promise that there's a cashier. Why? Because there's also that segment of the economy that is still cash reliant. Where digital will really take, the transformation on digital will really take a center stage is when everybody in the ecosystem can use digitization to encash value. If there is any broken chain, then we always continue to resort to cash, be it through an agent or any other partnership to cash that money out. So I see more of a transformation from the structure you have now into more of private entities being accepted into the payment ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Linus, for that input. We have, and I think this ties into and follows on from what we've just been discussing, actually. Mario is asking, and just guys off the top of your head here, I don't think he's looking for precise numbers, and it might vary from business to business, actually. How much of the remittance business across Africa is cash payout, and how much is other channels like wallets, accounts? What are your predictions for the next 3 years on how the numbers would change? So just to recap, the type of transfers that are being made, how much of remittance business across Africa is cash, how many is e-wallet, how many is bank transfer, and do you see that shifting and changing?
Okay, I think today the partners themselves will be in a good position to provide that statistics. What portion of a particular scheme goes to mobile wallet, cash, or to bank accounts in that respect. And I think today is a difficult statistics to come by. But having said that, was there an acceleration during the COVID to mobile wallets, bank accounts payouts? Yes. Would one expect this to continue because of the hype for digitization, the ease at which you can stay anywhere remotely and you do your transaction? Yes. But that yes can only be certain when we see transaction post-COVID. There are two scenarios. Post-COVID, we go back to old habits, or post-COVID, we've learned new habits and then we stick to how we were doing transactions or remitting funds during the COVID era. If we stick to how we're doing transactions during COVID, which accelerated the digitization anyway, then we can begin to say that, yes, a large part of remittances now will be digitized, whether it is ending up in into a mobile account or a bank account. If the customer, however, decide to go to old ways post-COVID, then you will see more of large cash. But as I said, it's left for the schemes themselves to actually help us with those kind of statistics on how the distribution is going to the different channels of delivery. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Would anybody like to add anything to that particular question then?
Yeah, if I can. I mean, I think it's a great question. And I think I started the answer to the first question you asked about saying we'd love to have better data. And that was just on the flows, let alone the methods used. But I do think that this is an area that it would be great, exactly as Linus said, to get more data. And I think some regulators are starting to look at whether they can get this from their licensed businesses. I mean, nobody knows the exact numbers, but if I had to put any sort of estimate, you would probably say cash is by far the largest still, and it's probably 70, 80%. Wallets and accounts significantly less, probably more wallets in Africa than in other parts of the world, but still relatively low. And the difference between wallets and accounts, you know, you might be looking at 10% each, but that's purely my top of the head guess. I think in terms of the next 3 years, and to Linus's point about it will depend on customer behavior post-COVID, that's exactly right. But I think what we did see before COVID is with consumer research is that when they switched to a digital method, they generally stayed with it. They might change the different providers. So if you were used to using cash, you then went to one of the digital providers, you probably would stay with it. That was what the consumers were saying. By far, they found it more convenient and it overcame a lot of the perceived barriers. But what they might actually do is not necessarily stick with the first provider they went to for digital services. So I would expect wallets to increase, cash to decrease a little bit, and accounts where people can actually access those accounts, then they're going to increase a little bit. But I think for me, wallets is probably in Africa anyway, where we'll see the growth. In other parts of the world, we might well see more growth in bank accounts, I would say, as opposed to wallets. But either way, I think cash will gradually decline, but it's not going to be massive, massive, massive decline.
Yeah, brilliant, excellent. I think I share the same sentiments. Cash has always been king, I think, in this industry. But where 5 years ago it was sort of 95% of the type of remittance people are doing, I think now it is more to the 85, 80%, and more people are doing wallet transfers and things like that. That's what we are seeing, and I think it is moving more and more towards that. The speed it's moving, obviously, COVID kind of sped that up a little bit. And there have been sort of initiatives from governments and other governing bodies to push towards more of a digitalization. So it'll be good. I think I agree with Isaac. We will see an increase too. How fast? How quickly? No one obviously knows. But it's definitely going in that direction. It's definitely going in that direction. Yeah. Just one more quick question. I want to put this one to Mohammed, and it's kind of a semi-question, semi-statement, Mohammed. It says, "Don't
Sure.
you?" He's saying, anonymous caller is saying, "Don't you think that the new regulations in Nigeria is against African money transfer companies who are sending from Africa to Nigeria? Is that something they're trying to stop or oppose, do you think?"
Well, I'm not sure whether that's the particular target, but from the news feed I've been reading, I think they were concerned from the US authorities in terms of crypto being used for fraud purposes. But you know, now with fake news, people would tend to use things and turn them around. So I don't think it's about the African companies, but I do know that as an African-based company, compliance is a big challenge for us in terms of trying to do business in Europe or even across our borders. But I think the Nigeria situation has more to do with fraud issues, more or less, than targeting African-based remittance companies.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mohammed, guys. Guys, we've come to the end of our webinar. First of all, to thank you all very much for attending today's RemitONE webinar, and I hope you found this session useful and helpful. Obviously, a big thank you to all our panelists. Again, thank you so much, Leon, Issacs, Sidharth, Gautam, Linus, Adaba, and Mohammed, Jagana, all thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really interesting to hear all your thoughts on all the topics that I've been speaking about today. We'll be providing a written summary and video upload of today's webinar in our next newsletter, so please keep an eye out for that. If anyone would like to speak to any of our panelists, please feel free to email us, and then we will facilitate that introduction for you guys, and you can continue conversations offline. I think one of the questions were on the side was, where can I get Leon's reports and things like that? So we will hopefully can share that. And please note, our next webinar is on compliance solutions for money transfers. Will take place on Wednesday, the 31st of March. So sign up early to guarantee your place. And thanks again, everyone. And please get in touch if there's anything you'd like to discuss regarding the webinar or RemitONE. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Sama.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, guys.